I've got the feeling it's an ominous day. It's a delight to hear him play. We got some poetry here coming. We got 4 terrific poets. Charles Hanzlicek, Inés Hernández, Ernesto, Trejo, and the crazy gypsy Omar Salinas. Let me see, what can I say? I think we're going to start off tonight with some poetry from Chuck Hanzlicek. I've been trying to get him to come down here and read for quite a while, and this is a special thing to have him come here. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50, 60 poets in this town. In the 60s, we had a good, strong English department. And one of the smart things they did is to get Chuck Hanzlicek in there. And so we have a lot of people that write poetry, and Chuck is the guy that I go to when I've got a poem done. I look him up and say, hey, you know, and he's the one that can comprehend. And he's a good counselor. And he's got a good sense of drama and poetry, a good sense of art. He has his own sense of principles. And anyway, Chuck has won quite a few awards, the Devons Award. He's won some endowments. He's got 5 books out, some new ones out. A book called A Dozen for Leah. Another one called Stars. These are fine books. Tonight, Chuck's going to read some translations and political poems, and I think that you'll be real interested in them. They're bringing a consciousness. I'm not sure of the poet. I believe it's one of the European poets. And so, without further ado or any more of my stumbling, I can't stand slick media. So, come on up, Chuck.
When I first started writing poetry in the early 1960s, my poems were very, very dark. And they stayed dark for a long time. And people tell you that things always get better, and they really do. And my life's gotten better, and my poems have gotten more celebratory. And I'm so damn depressed tonight that I didn't want to read anything celebratory. So I am going to read translations that I've done with a woman who lives in Czechoslovakia, translator Dana Pavlova, and we've collaborated on these translations of a Czech poet named Vladimir Holan, who died in 1980 and lived a very strange life that a lot of people live in Eastern European countries, of being almost a national hero until about 1948, when he was accused of decadent formalism, which is a standard charge brought against writers or artists who don't toe the line of socialist realism. And from 1948 until about 1962, none of his work was published, although he continued to write during all of those years. The collected poems of Vladimir Holan are gathered in 10 volumes of about 300 pages each. The collected Robert Frost is about 400 pages, so you can see 400 to 3,000. Holan wrote every day. These translations will be coming out in book form next fall from Wesleyan University Press, and they will be available in bookstores anywhere in America except in Fresno. He writes about everything since he wrote every day. Different things were happening, but I am going to read mostly political poems. And the first one is called Three of Them, and it's about three people who went through World War II, and of course Czechoslovakia was in the situation of being a Nazi-occupied country, and many of the people in Czechoslovakia who had any kind of expertise were drafted into the Nazi forces and put to work in one capacity or another. So this is about three characters. The parts are numbered, but I'll just pause. It's clear of the breaks. He isn't so old, but time and again suffering guided the sculptor's chisel and deepened the shallow wrinkles. During the war, he was forced to be a locomotive driver in Germany, survived several heavy air raids, and was wounded many times by Anglo-American bombers hitting the train's boilers. Since that time, his legs have been subject to attacks of paralysis. All of a sudden, he falls down and feels ashamed. Yesterday, he says, I had to fork over 100 crowns because I fell into a crate of eggs. Believe me, not me, but my destiny had more irony than it could drink, because with my defect, I got a job in a glass factory, and I either carry glass or truck it. I'm pregnant with the fear that I'll smash the glass on the unforeseeable. But when I carry something heavy, I don't fall. I usually fall when it's something lighter. I feel calm enough when I'm fishing in Trejo. I also worry about table corners and all edges on furniture. I tell my wife, don't stand in front of me. The other one, a machine fitter, went to Holland on German orders. I stayed there, he says, for ages. I remember the Russians best. They suffered the most. Nobody here has any idea about that. They took their shoes off and gave them to Germans for a piece of bread. When we told them they needed the shoes, they said, we gotta eat, let's croak later, but we gotta eat. That's what I remember best. Yeah, but you should have seen the invasion in Holland when the Western Allies cut the ribbon at last. All those floating dead, all those flooded villages. Then the Limeys came. I wanted to go to Russia or home, but the war was going on all the time. They didn't want me to go. They wanted me to repair their tanks. When I got to Prague, I had only my overalls. It was July. I've been a driver ever since. I'm 42. I've got no one here. My mom lives in Moravia. The third one is a woman. This is her confession. My husband's family was from the Sudetenland. Mom went crazy running away from Hitler in '38. Later, Dad got killed in an air raid in Kladno. And their son, my husband, was tortured to death by Germans during the May Revolution at Masaryk Station. He worked there. But why do I tell you all this? Now they're checking all pensions for widows of those killed in the revolution. And I think it's fair because many of them have no right to get the pension. You see, for instance, that woman's husband went to get some beer and got shot. But anyway, it's terrible when they ask me what my husband held in his hand when he got killed. What can I tell them? Only that I saw him a few days after he died, and because of the smell, I could hardly step into the room where he was. Do you remember that heat? And anyway, we were crazy about each other, and ever since he's gone, I've always worried something horrible is about to happen. Worried that he'll suddenly appear in the door, and he did several times, as a ghost in a veil. He takes a deep bow and leaves. But I still keep in touch with my Joe, and I couldn't live without him watching over me or helping me. And when I'm chopping wood, I say, how should I split this log, my love, without hitting the knot? This one's called Children at Christmas in 1945, and the last line of the poem is in italics, and I'm absolutely sure that Boulon just lifted the last line right out of a pamphlet or some, political tract. I saw children at Christmas in 1945. They stood in front of the only stall in Charles Square, and they stood in line. They were pale. They borrowed shoes from each other and breathed on the tips of fingers without nails. But they stood there patiently, humbly, grateful in advance, awaiting their turn to buy cotton candy, that sweet air, because there was nothing else for sale. And I saw a hungry boy running with a briefcase to get communion wafers at the baker's, looking forward to eating all the broken pieces at the vicarage. And I saw a mother who in the morning stuck 10-penny nails into a sour crab apple, and in the evening gave the apple to her kids, convinced they would at least get a little iron in their blood. World, you bastard, what should I do with you? What should I do with you if I hear your blackmailing talk about how to safeguard peace so military intervention won't become necessary? This poem is called The Vltava in 1946. The Vltava is a river that runs through Prague, and there are some islands out in the river. In fact, Holan lived on an island in the Vltava, and so ferry boats go back and forth across the river. A child is standing on the bank with a heavy bag full of windfall plums and moans and cries because there's no ferry boat. It's so bestially miserable and so undernourished that its fingernails haven't begun to grow yet, and its throat looks as if it were coiled with a rope from a death bell. When you take it on the ferry, it says nothing. Its distrust is immovable, and only when it unconsciously puts its hand into the stream, it wishes the trip would last longer. Gives you from time to time a resigned glance, feels like a member of the crew, feels happy, and suddenly from this happiness blurts out, "I was in a concentration camp." "Come on, don't lie." People refuse to believe. "I swear." "Don't lie." I swear, says the poor wretch. But no one believes it's true. So you take it a few times from one bank to the other and then say goodbye. But the child hesitates, and out of gratitude, as if it wanted to reward you with something jealously hidden and very precious, it says, "Mister, we got little rabbits at home." This one is called In the Yard of the Polyclinic, and a polyclinic is a European word for an outpatient hospital. This morning I heard persistent and angry blows on a carpet beaten in the yard of the polyclinic, and I had to think of all the hearts persistently and angrily beating shabby curtains of hope for a kinder future that wouldn't lie even if it were true. And I had to think of all those people lost and begging, and of those who can't beg, tired as a hand after the war. I had to think of creatures stuck in the doors of those who talk while eating, and to whom they offered statuettes of gargoyles, threads from virgins' blouses, or ice cream made of April snow. I had to think of those who commune with the fickle grave only in the language of whores. I had to think of all those constantly longing and constantly disappointed, so they know only the anger of desire and slippery mushrooms instead of made butter. I had to think of all those eternally cheated, so they become spiritual. So spiritual that they are in every body, in every coughing basement apartment, and in every body that hasn't eaten for a long time and warms its raw hands at the kitchen fire of imagination with its dipping flames. I had to think of those desperate men who stumble in the borrowed shoes of alcohol, of all those who are so commonplace that they're invisible in their humiliation, drowned by the goldsmith's selfish anvil. I had to think of all those God could hear about if children sent him a telegram, if children got hold of a radio, if children weren't as merciless as adults. I had to think of all those said to be riddles, who are simply souls nobody feels any mercy for. I had to think of pale girls in shops, in empty passageways, with lamps lit all day and no customers. Girls who are startled when someone enters to buy a roll. I had to think of girls who try to hide their pregnancy and yet produce illegitimate children out of nothingness. The nothingness of nettles and graveyard plums, while fate feels like wine going up your nose when you laugh. I had to think of newsboys running beside streetcars with the wretched servility of tubercular patients and with earwigs of cries, of female singers who lost their voices and lower their necklines to louden their breasts, of women servants who, when tidying up the houses of the rich, are only allowed to walk barefoot on rags thrown on the floor so they won't dirty the parquet. I had to think of all those with rings in their noses, of all those dragged to places where they're needed like salt, to salt mines, sewers, the sweatshops of Petrock Square. Yes, I had to think of all those inside whom I am and always will be, as long as there are old forgotten women who must beg pitifully leaning against the railway station wall, oh yes, there, where people are in such a hurry, and as long as there are old men who, though they're just the skin and bones of a tombstone epitaph, have to live and are quickly shut up by dead men's mouths, oh yes, there, where lazy pedestrians forgot to bring their compassion, and as long as there's poverty and misery, both apparently disappointed because they're misunderstood, and misunderstood because they're unliberated, and as long as there are poor people who out of pride save up for a coffin and funeral music, and as long as there are the wretched ones who are down and out, whose fate boozed up the cash box at St. Elegy's Church, and who don't know when they were born or why they were named, and who, as adults, in times of peace, are buried in sugar crates, and as children, are buried in soapboxes. This one's called To the Enemies. I've had enough of your baseness, and I haven't killed myself only because I didn't give myself life, and I still love somebody because I love myself. You may laugh, but only an eagle can attack an eagle, and only Achilles can pity the wounded Hector. To be is not easy. To be a poet and a man means to be a forest without trees and to see. A scientist observes. Science can only forage for truth. Forage, yes. Take wing, no. Why? It's so simple, and I've said it before. Science is in probability, poetry in parables. The large cerebral hemisphere refuses the most exquisite poem by clamoring for sugar. A rooster finds rain repulsive, but that's another story. It is night. You might say, sexually mature, and the young lady's breasts are so firm you could easily break 2 glasses of schnapps on them. But that's another story. And imagine a ship's beacon, a sailing beacon, but that's an entirely different story. And your whole development from the stella for man to the stella of a lichen, but that's an entirely different story. A cloud is going to vomit, but there's not even a gas leak at your place. You cannot be. You can't even be strangled by snake scales. What God conceived, he wants to be felt. Children and drunkards know this, but they aren't brazen enough to ask why a mirror fogs when a menstruating woman looks into it. And poets from love of life do not ask why wine moves in the barrels when she passes by. And I've had enough of your impudence that permeates everything it wanted to contain but couldn't embrace. But a Holocaust will come that you couldn't have dreamed of, having no dreams. What God conceived, he wants to be felt. A Holocaust will come. Children and drunkards know it. Joy could come about only through love if love were not passion. Happiness could come about only through love if happiness were not passion. Children and drunkards know it. In order to be, you would have to live, but you won't because you don't live, and you don't live because you don't love, because you don't even love yourself, let alone your neighbor. And I've had enough of your vulgarity, and I haven't killed myself only because I didn't give myself life, and I still love somebody because I love myself. You may laugh, but only the female eagle can attack the male eagle, and only Briseus, the wounded Achilles. To be is not easy. Only shitting is easy. Then to end, just a couple of little short poems. This one's called Mothers After the War. There are many who court God. There are many who curse. There are many who can't forgive. There are many who help themselves by blaming destiny, although they've never gotten to know it very well. There are many who have gone mad, but there isn't a single one who would re-enter her life. Scattering grain to pigeons, one of them harshly told you, "I know my boy's been dead a long time, but he still doesn't answer my letters." And this little one kind of explains what Holland thinks has gone wrong with the world, called Never. He has an earlier poem in which there's a bird called a tit. You know, he's not talking about a breath, he's talking about a bird called a tit. And there's an earlier poem he has where this bird keeps saying, "Thorn in the ass, thorn in the ass, thorn in the ass." You know, it drives him crazy. So that bird appears again in this poem. You got along with animals, except for one German shepherd. You got along with reptiles, except for one snake. You got along with birds, except for one blue tit. You got along with things as sincere as the creaking doors in Mozart's apartment. You often got along with a man, but never with people. Never with people who, without mercy, forced you to give up the world in the children's playground. Thanks.
We're going to get him to come back here again soon. Inés? The next poet is one by the name of Inés Hernández. And she teaches out of Fresno State. And I have some notes here I want to read them. Because if you ever bought the Wilt calendar, if you've ever looked at it, Inés has a poem in there. And I had the privilege of publishing a poem in that same magazine too. She's been an editor of a magazine called Hendra, and her poetry has appeared in a number of magazines and anthologies. She the poet of conscience. There's a lot of conscience in her poem, and she's also brings in elements from another culture. She is Nez Perce and Chicano, and you never disengage yourself from that, from your native culture. She brings a lot of that and synthesizes it in her poetry. And her poems release a kind of a power and purpose concerning social need. Right. She has an ability to express social and collective terms, a strong sense of what should come first in terms of principles. And little note here, able traumatize. It is wholly. Let me see if I get this right. I'm learning how to introduce big words some But it is unnecessary to accept the world's common neglect of any individual's higher ideals. And there are terms like communist, savage, terrorist, sinner. These are the terms of people who have no conscience. And she's a very inspiring poet, and I'm glad to have her come here and read. Inés?
Pues buenas noches. Que viva el Nicaragua libre. I'd like to dedicate this poetry reading to the people of Nicaragua, who definitely, I think, after today will be our source of inspiration in this continent.
All right.
I'd like to start with a poem that's not mine. I want that to be very clear, but it's a beautiful poem. It's a poem by a sister poet by the name of Jane Cortez, who is living in New York. She's a black poet. The poem is called There It Is. It's weird, I can't see anybody, but move it towards me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? My friend, they don't care if you're an individualist, a leftist, a rightist, a shithead, or a snake. They will try to exploit you, absorb you, confine you, disconnect you, isolate you, or kill you, and you will disappear into your own rage, into your own insanity, into your own poverty, into a word, a phrase, a slogan, a cartoon, and then ashes. The ruling class will tell you that there is no ruling class as they organize their liberal supporters into white supremacist lynch mobs, organize their children into Ku Klux Klan gangs, organize their police into killer cops, organize their propaganda into a device to ossify us with angel dust, preoccupy us with Western symbols and African hairstyles, inoculate us with hate, institutionalize us with ignorance, hypnotize us with a monotonous sound designed to make us evade reality and stomp our lives away. And we are programmed to self-destruct, to fragment, to get buried under covert intelligence operations of unintelligent committees, impulse toward death. And there it is. The enemies polishing their penises between oil wells at the Pentagon, the bulldozers leaping into demolition dances, the old folks dying of starvation, the informers wearing out shoes looking for crumbs, the lifeblood of the earth almost dead in the greedy mouth of imperialism. And my friend, they don't care if you're an individualist, a leftist, a rightist, a shithead, or a snake. They will spray you with a virus of Legionnaire's disease, fill your nostrils with the swine flu of their arrogance, stuff your body into a tampon of toxic shock syndrome, try to pump all the resources of the world into their own veins, and fly off into the wild blue yonder to pollute another planet. And if we don't fight, if we don't resist, if we don't organize and unify and get the power to control our own lives, then we will wear the exaggerated look of captivity, the stylized look of submission, the bizarre look of suicide, the dehumanized look of fear, and the decomposed look of repression, forever and ever and ever. And there it is. This particular particular poem that I'm going to read is a short one called Small Change. It's from a manuscript called Abre Caminos, and this is dedicated especially to those of us who are quite obviously tokens and fill the quotas of all of the affirmative action guidelines. Small change. Those most easily expendable tokens is all we are, circulated for our currency, gestures of leniency chosen to afford voice lessons in whoring and pimping here. First come, first serve, your Uncle Sam needs you to die. Go straight to the front of the line, up the ladder to success for your patron, 'cause you're a winner. This one is very unfinished, but I'm going to try it out. For the Wild Blues, first Tuesday of November, Poetry Evening, Election Night, 1984. Today, this nation-state, which I do not recognize as mine, has manifested for the world its ignorance. In fact, this country has exposed itself by choosing to ignore that darkness that surrounds and penetrates it. There is a lie that is the basis of this privileged land, and the blood money that allows us to consume the way we do is splattered all over our hands, and our faces will increasingly show us grotesque images through the smoking mirror, because we cannot continue to insist on the advantage. Each time we fret about what to eat and wear and say in pseudo-intellectual circles these days, each time we excuse our indulgence and extravagance and waste, we feed the bad, as Indian people say, give it strength, and in so doing we sap the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth, of the creation, and of the poor and humble, and no, not absolutely noble masses, but not absolutely ignoble either. At this moment, as we gather to read what we offer as poetry in a crowd sprinkled perhaps with a few elitist poets who do not hear the voices of the people, in another part of town, some raza is dancing to a cumbia that says, Tenemos hambre, queremos comer, tenemos sed y queremos beber. Raza is getting together to share their loneliness over a few beers and listen to songs about hunger and thirst in little out-of-the-way bars where the Mexicans go who work the fields and on their off time observe the North Americans and see their weaknesses. I know, 'cause on my wandering, restless nights I go to find them, and my heart hurts and is glad to hear musicians singing in polka style. Y la línea divisoria es la tumba del mojado, la cerca de la tortilla, eso pensa para el pueblo. En México se pasean franceses, chinos y griegos, y algunos americanos son caciques en los pueblos. Raza doesn't have to take political science, economics classes to understand their circumstance. They don't even comment on the music as it's sung, but intonations register in the collective consciousness. The tortilla curtain is offensive. Some gringos own and control whole towns in the south, and the border which is imposed is the tomb of the wetback. My friends that I meet do not even give their real names. Real names can be traced, but we exchange our words and work our way through the smoke and liquor to find clarity. It is very clear to a 20-year-old Mexican friend of mine that the struggle is and must deal with material need. He has no use for spirituality as I talk about the old ways of this continent and the spirits of our ancestors. But even so, the conversation stimulates me, who am jaded by my college students who believe they are literate, and some of whom insist that Cuba and Nicaragua taught their people how to read and write in order to control them, indoctrinate them, and prohibit them material from the free world. The USA, this nation state, has made a choice today. 2 days ago, the brave little country of Nicaragua also made a choice, and we are set. Every step of ours must be a step too for justice and for truth. Each step must be executed consciously, deliberately, deliberadamente, with a liberated mind, for the war is on for real. This may not be a carefully executed intellectual exercise in language, but in Nicaragua, this would be a poem. This one is for a woman named Mabuya Nahanda, who's from Zimbabwe and was one of the revolutionary leadership. And she was assassinated. I don't know a whole lot about her, but the little bit that I know moved me to write this for her. For Mabuya Nahanda, they hung you, so terrified were they of your spirit. They hung your body, then burned it to ashes scattered. Today Zimbabwe sings for you, Mother Earth. Today your people honor you openly as they always did in their hearts. For you and Sakuru Kaguvi gave life, Shona lion spirit. You are the majesty of your people. Whites cannot combat wisdom. All their brutality cannot conquer the courage of a people whose time has come. Today you walk the earth again, earth replenished by your ashes. Today Zimbabwe sings for you, Mabuya Nahanda. Shona lion spirit lives. I'd like to share a poem with you that was written by one of my students in my English class last semester in the spring. I walked in one day and I was giving them a lot of poetry and they were kind of upset with me, but that was all right. And I walked in one day and I said, you've got 30 minutes, write me a poem. This one is from one of my young Palestinian students. His name is Abed Sadek, and I told him that one day I would read this in a poetry reading, so I'd like to offer that to you tonight. It's called I'm Coming to You, Enemy. I'm coming to you, enemy. I'm coming from every street, every window, every house. I'm coming to you, enemy. I'm coming with my gun and my faith. I die, I live, it doesn't matter, but I am coming to you, enemy. The blood of my people is very precious, and I'm not going to forget that. I'm coming to you from every street, every window, every house. I might starve, I might get killed, I might get orphaned, but I'm not going to kneel or give up. Oh, my sister, oh, my mother, prepare a grave for me. I am coming to my enemy. I am coming to die in my village. Oh, my mother, don't weep or cry. Don't get depressed. I will be a martyr. I am coming to you, enemy. I am coming from every street, every window, every house. I am coming to you, enemy. How many of you understand Spanish? Anybody? No, a few of you do. I heard an interesting explanation about the need to understand Spanish in this continent from one of the vice presidents of Fresno State last week. She said she was trying to figure out how to convince the faculty and staff that it would be a good idea to learn, and it was ironic because she said, well, I could present it to them. This was a meeting with the Chicano faculty. She said, I could present it to them in the most crass way possible and tell them that considering the rising population of people who speak Spanish in this country, that it would be a good idea for them to learn. And we all laughed and said, why is that crass? You know, that's the truth. So this one I'd like to share with you, and it's in Spanish. It's talking to the sovereign peoples of this continent and the different Indian nations, the campesinos, the workers, the common people, the raza, which by the way is also the human race, right? There's one race, human race. Nimipu, Lakota, Diné, O'Reilly, Maya, Mexica, Mapuche, Huichol, Muscogee, campesinos, obreros, macehuales, raza, esta nuestra gente, nosotros como un pueblo único, Semanagua, pueblo nativo, sabemos lo que sabemos, que en esta tierra existen leyes naturales, ahora sistemáticamente agravadas, o sea, frustradas por las fuerzas de los capitalistas. Por eso la importancia en el cuerpo, en la carne y en posesión, posición. No quieren arrugarse, mucho menos arriesgarse a admitir verdades. Como si no existiera también ley de compensación, como si todo el mundo no supiera lo que está pasando y cada quien lo interprete como pueda. Los vendidos de una forma conveniente, los maltratados de una forma no arbitraria. Así que canten, pueblos soberanos, y que sus cantos vuelen por los cuatro vientos, tocando corazones como bendición del cielo. Jefes y jefas del camino, de ustedes vamos tomando dirección. I think I know I feel agitated right now for this moment in the history of this particular country, and I was thinking today, you know, what to do to offer you that it's something for me that is an attempt to transform that energy that is so negative, that is all around us. And this song came to me and it'll never be sung again the same way, and I don't know if it'll ever even, well, it'll probably be sung again, but I don't know if it'll ever be sung this way again, because I don't know exactly how it's going to come out right now. But the song, I'd like to offer it as a prayer for consciousness of the people in this nation, and prayer for Mother Earth and the forces of good. The trail of tears has not ended. Why do we live in the past, you ask? It is what is known as history, I am told. Did you ever see an Indian by the side of the road? He is still on the path that his ancestors took. He is still on the forced march. The imposed relocation now is of his heart and of his soul. His land has been sold often for what a bottle of whiskey cost. The loss of his pride, a disgrace to his name that he carries from the beginning of time. Lineage matters to Indian peoples too. It matters that you are the daughter or the son of your mother and father, the granddaughter or grandson of your grandma and grandpa. When we are born, we are told we are human beings who have come to do the Creator's work, that we who walk this earth are the link between our ancestors and our unborn generations, that we must live in honor for all our relations, for all creation of which we are a part. For this we walk our road. For this each step of ours is a memory of each tear, each heart broken, each suffering cry, each last prayer of those who went before us. With each step, with each struggling step now and then, we resist the relocation. We resist extermination. With each step, we offer a prayer for each tear, each heart broken, each suffering cry, for the memory of those who went before us, for ourselves, for the old ones and the children, for the truth. I'd like to finish just with one tiny poem. Who is good with words, they say sometimes a poet is. Who is good with words sometimes says nothing, lets the heartbeat speak. Thank you.
Angel of the Sun. Also another one. Mindful perception. Engaging and winning. Anyway, we have two more poets to read. And the next poet is, I introduced him last time as the Excalibur of Latin poetry. His name is Ernesto Trejo. There are many great figures in the Latin literature and poetry. And it is the will of this next poet to carry that tradition forward. And we're glad that he's with us. I have another note here. If you go, good poets, if you're too far south and you're a good poet, and they like your poetry, they take you out to shoot you. Of course, we know that now. And, if you don't know why, you probably study the history of corporations and banking. You might find out money talks big in this consumer world. Okay. Anyway, Ernesto, his poems are very deep and very strong poems. I don't know what else to say about him except I love his poetry and I love him. Come on up here and read for us.
Can you hear me? I'd like to start by reading a few translations into English done a few years ago by our admired friend Philip Levine and myself, of Jaime Sabines, from a book entitled Tarumba. This is not political poetry, but then again, maybe it is political poetry. This has to do with desire. There's no title. Yeah, Tarumba, you're already on fire. It drags you one way, then the other. You grind like a honeycomb. You explode 1,000 times. You go for 4 days without a woman because you like it that way. The burning up and the coming back. You like to pass the tongue of your eyes over them all. Tarumba, you were born in spit, born in God, what knows, hot goo. Your curse was to grow only 2 hands. Salty Tarumba, you've got the height of a mouth and you never wear out. You're not going to make it, even though you cry, even though you sit perfectly still like a good boy. Mr. Salinas would appreciate your applause. In this town, Tarumba, I watch everyone every day. We are a family of crickets. I get tired. I know everything. I guess it. I feel it. The marriages, the adulteries, the deaths. I know when the cricket poet wants to sing, when the buzzards come to market, when I am going to die. I know which ones, at what time, how they do it. Healing themselves in the bars, kissing in movie houses, menstruating. They cry, sleep, wash their hands. The only thing I don't know, Tarumba, is when we are leaving through the underground tunnel for the sea. I put a head on your shoulders. I put a head on your shoulders and it started to laugh. A bulb and it lit up. I put an onion and a rabbit drew near. I put my hand on you and you went off. At midnight, I knocked 4 times on your door with the ring around the moon, and the sheet with a woman's body opened and I entered the darkness. In the water, you were like a serpent, and your eyes glittered with the right green for those hours. The wind entered with me and went up your skirt right to the joy that didn't even move. Holding a candle, the clock began to strike 1 from room to room. Grandmother Spider weaved and the cat's girl waited for her sweetheart. Outside, God snored. And in the hands of fear, the thief, his rod of justice, led the orchestra in a waltz. You breathed into my navel, and I puffed up and ascended among the angels. But I had time to put on my little shirt and the shoes in which they baptized me. You stayed on the ground, smoldering like a cigarette. Several years later, I had a chance to meet the poet Jaime Salinas, and in fact became a close friend. And the following is a poem called "Conversation with Jaime Salinas." And there are 2 voices, a question and an answer. I question, he answers. Why is it pouring so hard? It isn't raining. The sky is falling down. Why is it pouring so hard? Here the rain is like air. How many children do you have? 6 or 7? I don't really know. How many children do you have? I have peopled my life with ghosts, and some of them were my children. What do your poems say? They say little, and they sprout like weeds. What do your poems say? Only when I write am I able to sleep. I wear my anguish like a scarf, and I myself am a burdened tree. My poems are stones hurled at the open space, nowhere for no one. What about the tattered suit? It isn't tattered, it's new. What about the tattered suit? I have worn it all my life. I don't remember ever having a different one on. Why do you want to die? It's life which goes on and isn't over. Why do you want to die? It's death which follows me all the time. And after death, what? Nothing. And after death, what? After death, the discovery. To feel that all of this wasn't useless. To remember the dawn, the sad eyes of cows, the dampness without end of Chiapas, all the golden dust of life. The following poem is, it was written to a girl that was my girlfriend many years ago, and for some reason, she came back one day to me in my imagination, and I spoke to her. You know, there's some people that say, when they read poems or when they write poems, they say, you know, this really happened. Well, my poems say, you know, this really didn't happen. Your house. This morning, for no reason at all, I thought of you. There's no mystery here. No. You've been a tiny lump in my throat all these years, making house in the dark. I imagine you in your other house, posted behind the kitchen window, waiting for your children to step off the bus and come to you hungry. A minute ago, you were stumbling in and out of rooms, looking for a way out. But it was raining outside, and you too were hungry. Here's a poem which I dedicate to Chuck Moulton. He calls it my gangster poem, mafia poems. I should explain a few things about it. I speak of my father, I speak of my grandfather, and people go back and forth, the U.S. and Mexico, and this has turned out to be the story of my life. I came to this country, and then I went back, and I came here, went back. Now I'm here again. And but this is really about other people. It's about my father and grandfather. The cloud unfolding. It starts with a picture of my grandfather, machine-gunned in his car, 1923. A snapshot with poor composition, slightly out of focus. It holds the 43 bullets that pushed for life and which now find their black spaces and obey our eyes. His last verses will never leave that picture. His body will never leave that car. His blood will forever cake on the red upholstering. Someone pulled you out of the car. Someone else unfolded a blanket over your face, not knowing that you wanted to see that cloud unfold over the whole sky or gather into rain and flood your eyes. What filled your last seconds were not curses, but visions of battle, other men dying, horse counts, and where do we go from here? My grandfather once stayed up all night in El Paso, shaved the goatee, and in the morning tapped his heart and felt the fake passport. Passing for a businessman, he walked 6 blocks to the train station, a black mushroom in the fog, a piece of shit under the sky of El Paso. Suddenly, it's 1936, and a man who is my father is in Los Angeles. Outside, the newspapers cheer justice done to the colored in the South. They tell the Mexicans to go back home and speculate if Roosevelt, the syphilitic Jew, will sell to the Germans tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. My father is putting 2 ice cubes in a glass of water when the phone rings and a voice tells him, "Your bar is on fire." When my father arrives at the bar, 9 years of good luck go up in smoke, and someone tells him it was the Negroes. Your brother wouldn't give them credit. My father nods, not knowing why, and stands there for hours, following the smoke cloud from his bar until the sun silhouettes the city everywhere, and he thinks, this fire is a bad omen. Father, for the rest of your life in Mexico, you never mentioned the fire, the story of your father, but spoke of flappers, of Roosevelt, of Chaplin, devoured by a clock on his way to work. I have some poems in which a character, like I said, these things are not true. So there's a character, and his name is E, initial E. And in this poem, E gives a name to another person, and that name, for some reason, a nickname, sticks, and it's about guilt and how these things happen. E gives a name. Later, no one knew who had named him. No one cared, and the name blended with his face in the mirror, and the springs under his chair repeated it over dinner. He wore it the way you wear a scar or a mole. He wore it until it was no more than a taste in his mouth that he couldn't wash out. I nicknamed him. I christened him Worm. Later, it was the link between us. He would dream of getting back, but a nickname never caught, not even in his head. If he said snail, if he said moth or spider, they would become wormy, slimy, winged, or 8-legged words. If they were meant for me, they would ring in his head like the clear bell of his childhood. Some nights he would dream of everyone screaming in repentance, dream the sparrow landing on his finger and flying off with his name. He saw the cockroach on its back, kicking and dying like a name. He walked to the window and saw the darkness stretching like a yawn and wakened. And awake, he went to the mirror, and the name was there, blended with his face. The name was also in his throat, a bitter taste that he couldn't wash out. The name was all around him. It was the air he was breathing to stay alive. The following poem is it's entitled Window Washer, and it's about a guy who comes in after hours and cleans offices, people who do this type of work. Window washer. It's always August before sunup. He leaves the scaffold and enters the world of office workers. He makes the typewriters hum their one song, lets the ink bottles scribble a signature on the walls and dances toward the window where he strikes conversation with a hanging fern. How they got to this place. They talk about the stars who are basically like children, the clock whose heart is dark. On the ceiling, roaches trudge along, hypnotized. Outside, an airplane is a lost and sleepless bee. The rain brings a prayer. His hands are furrowed like his heart, man and plant growing down, hanging from the roots. They confess their wish of following the air, of burning with the fire in the east, while the typewriters hum and hum the only song they know. Okay, well, since Inés read a poem in Spanish, you know, I feel like I should read a poem in Spanish. Okay. It's called a sonnet to Janis Joplin. Soneto a Janis Joplin. Okay. Como agua cae tu voz granizada, feroz, va sacándole a la nada pedazos de tiempo, Janis lúdica, apresas humo, piedras, música. La droga arroja claves de tu vida, que arroja sobre la mía. Cimbrada, orgásmica, llegas a mi alma y al descifrarte te me vuelves nada. Basta tu voz con tierra y con claveles, polvo de vida otra vez disuelto, intimidad de altos decibeles. Por tu garganta fluye un río sereno, ya sin corrientes encontradas. Eres aquel polvo, fantasma al que me atengo. Finally, I'd like to read a poem which I wrote to a president which was very unlike Ronald Reagan. Okay, this was a president which was a demagogue, Luis Echeverría, president of Mexico from 1970 to 76, and I wrote this toward the end of his crazy reign. And what he would do, they would hold these meetings, you know, that would go on for 15 hours at a time, where they would study the problems. And of course, he would say, do this, do that. Secretary of Transportation, you know, build 5 roads, and all this, you know, he was playing at being president, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. He was unlike Reagan, but because Reagan works part-time. But in a way, he was the same. He had the same arrogance of power. He was a populist. But in the end, he was a liar. He was corrupt. And so in this poem, he's working very hard. The president is up before the fruit vendor. The president is up before the fruit vendor and goes to bed after the bus driver. He says, history is unfair. If the president has a toothache, we grieve. If he smiles, we smile. Sometimes we think we like him and sleep happy for it, but once we are asleep, it's different. He worries and makes laws about our dreams. We may not dream in other languages. We may not dream a life without him. We may not dream if he's out of the country. But there are ways. There are ways. We dream while we're at work and while we eat. When we smile at him and shake his hand, we're dreaming. Sometimes we see his picture and dream of his glasses streaked with blood, his chin tunneled by worms. Around the mouth that punishes and forgives, a string of flies silences what could be a last word. Below, the chest is covered with the spit of children. Since we have never seen his eyes, we don't dream about them. They are windows that send their their black light into our hearts. Thank you.
A lot of times in his poems, there's a point where the individual merges with the collective, and where the individual either merges with the collective or he shatters like a piece of crystal because of rejection or something like that. And it's something we all go through every day. And this Omar Salinas, our crazy gypsy.
I think this election night, I think all our votes are going to help tonight. I'm going to read my first poem. Until Heaven Gets Tired. I wrote this poem in Mexico, where I spent a month. And it seems to me that poverty was a topic because so much of it around there. Oh, they disappeared. Well, here it is. Until Heaven Gets Tired. In this curious, mad evening, when the things I invent are unreal, and my life, like a cow, sings crudely, I make the villages in my brain whistle at the girls. There are drums and flutes, women milking shadows in this fleeting residence. I leave my prayers here in this palace of bad stomachs. My heart is young again, and I pick up my faces. Mexican madness, tequila and flowers raining down from heaven. What wild dream is this? These hands of mine groan, I toss them at the wind. It is the sea I listen to. These carcasses and cunts stealing nectar from the dreaming stars. I must have drunk a mad star or dreamed this dream. This life, so difficult to understand. Let's chase ghosts and dance with women in the street, frolic in the dawn until Heaven gets tired of looking at our dirty faces. One of my topics is death. I think this poem is it's a leaping poem, like Blythe calls it, it's in his thesis on Spanish poets who've been printing poems on me, my poetry. Many things of death. Death today smells of apples, worms chewing their gums, a child with mud on his hands. Today it has the mouth of an insect crawling through the avenues. It has nightmares of fish drunk on rain. It has the footsteps of a gardener wanting to murder a chair. It has nonsense in its eyes, a dog barking at a cloud, a woman opening an awkward door. It has the stubbornness of an owl hatching its eggs. It has the elegance and laughter of clowns. Many things of death in the taciturn protest of ants, in the unrest of flies. I jig lightheaded. that I'm a piece of thought wandering loose to the street, and that a smile comes with me hiding in my brow. That I don't know what drives the night into the palm of a cat's paw and snickers away like a flamenco. That a songster comes to me with a stick denouncing my shoes, and lust creeps in before breakfast, and my anger walks between two lepers, or a woman wants my body and I delude her with romantic logic. I look for little miracles here and there, stick them in my pockets, and appear unannounced at a funeral. And this brain counts 2s and 3s and can't save me. 5, 6, and 7, and I jig lightheaded. What's there to worry about? I think it was Peter Everwine who mentioned the fact that of my kinship with the Spanish and Hispanic poets. And it goes way back to the late 60s. I began reading almost all of them. And his poems were good Pablo Neruda. You have to forgive me for my voice. We will in all certainty try to be near to you, for out of the clarion chilling earth, charged with wine, you intoxicated us. You modeled a planet for the desperate heart. You who talked to the stars as if women lived there. You who bathed your seagoing hands with the blue of agility and genius in the emotion of earthenware. I can see you on a train with Miguel, Cesar, Garcia, Rafael, Juan Ramon, eating paella on the edge of the horizon and describing the death of capitalism. We will in all certainty try to be there when the day comes, trumpeting like a general in the dust of Guernica, the dust of tubercular Miguel's bones, the skull of Lorca, and the earth that will become Cephas yet about to fly and cover the planet with blood. These next poems are new poems. I had a whole year of strange inspiration, or rather lack of inspiration. The muse is not as nice as it used to be. The things get more difficult. Among the flowers, it's sort of bereavement of sorts, this poem. Talk to me that I may understand, for my fingers burn to hear that I will find love in a subway, that I will be entertained by crickets until I break into dream and stop running. Talk to me so I will not look at my corpse or whistle in the dark edge of my boot. Sing if you can to my solitary hat discovering me again. Walk with me without letting on you're a stranger and I a cripple, bound in gauze for the evening. Tell everyone I was here with an overpowering illusion, bowing my head, tossing among the ample sorrow of viruses. Until daybreak. Lately, there's been a tendency for the demons and the angels in my mind, in my psyche, to play games with me. We all go through difficult times, so there's nothing new, nothing, until daybreak. It is evening, clouded and still. My fingers shout, no one can hear them. No one can see me outfitted in the color of dusk. Shadows dart in the backyard, in the criminal air. And a woman could die here, pull out her hair and die. My hobo heart plays cards. The dogs bark at the devil. I am back in the intestines of a small town. Cover me with your love in the dark page of sleep. Single out my face. I will be the keeper of silence. I will beat these drums of that air. Poem, kind of inspired by a Peruvian poet, Cesar Vallejo. He writes, the title of the poem is Let's Begin the Day. I took a line from one of his poems, which which is an epigram here. He says, the day has just begun, put on your coat. If I can't be a saint, I'll be a mirror in your room where you can see yourself. I'll be a man on the street giving chrysanthemums to passers-by. Come to me, for if I can't be a saint, the music will start again and I'll be suffering badly. Let me touch you, for I feel blind. Let me cover your face with kisses, for it's necessary to begin the day with enthusiasm and the bravado of the bullfighter. There's nothing wrong, just a crazy boredom which follows us into the night like a sad creature from the sea. This poem dedicated to my father. It's his second poem. The other one I read here last time, about 4 or 5 months ago, in life. I am interested in the happiness of birds, their quiet pose in the backyard, and the voice of a hero in joyful freedom. In my circle of life, I learned something of a deep sadness, how troubadours bring greetings of joy from the afterlife. They are quick to recognize me. I become sadder when my face inhabits the discolored sun, when the owl and the rabbit are wounded and go off to die with no music but the winds. The Mexican song my father listens to says, I will not return. Father, your son loves you. In the coffee shop I know your sight is failing, for you can't recognize your friends and your coins. Now the days are long and we grow restless. Think of it. When you go, your son has his heart of poems that will clean up the image of death. Without guts, death won't bother us. But when you lost your father and he lost his, there was a deadening of life in the fields. A flattened bird, a flattened rabbit, blackbirds like leaves in the dry sycamore, and your lucid eyes filled me with wonder. The old do not have much to live for, but we've made gains. Don't worry, Father. I'll be quiet around you, for carrying grief is not supposed to be our way. I just go and be generous with my anger. I'll be tight-lipped, drink from your brandy, eye a woman, and tell her I've seen Paris. We've done it all, you and I, and certainly these are not tears that are in my eyes, only a handful of dust blowing us in all of life. We'll say goodbye, Father, with a gutty magnificence. This was a letter, supposed to be a letter to Soto, my friend Gary Soto, Berkeley, who teaches in Berkeley. Very successful young man, good poet. The letter never got to him. I turned it into a poem. Letter to Soto. We're on our way, all right, with a herd of wild dogs, for I've been frightened by the city, so we go to the hills to be renewed. Even the sky is different. The stars huddle like women, and I'm counting my sighs, for there is much to be said about wealth. We're on our way, all right, the river where you almost drowned, and Mariko exclaiming, I'm from the plum country. Certainly the ghettos walk on bad knees. The Fresno prostitutes are trying to convince us to look up their sleeves. The beggars bumping into me with eyes of pale milk, and a woman somewhere whispering to the lilacs, Omar is crazy. Yes, ladies, yes, yes, yes to anything. And the big theater of loneliness, like a huge hand drop out of the sky. Yet, I can hear my friends in the distance, like doves saying, Omar, it's all right, it's all right. And the mind adds zeros. The flesh talks of youth and his heart. The heart is silent, like the dangling string on the package of cigarettes in the asylum. And they find me in bad elbows by the meadow with a copy of Omar Khayyam, whiskey, and my poems that can't find an ear. Thank you.
That concludes the poetry. I wouldn't want to try to follow that. Terrific. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we want to thank the poets and so remember. There's still beer over there, I guess.